A reading from the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 28, verse 1 through 16. Once we had reached safety, we learned that the island was called Malta. The natives showed us extraordinary hospitality. They lit a fire and welcomed all of us because it had begun to rain and was cold. Paul had gathered a bundle of brushwood and was putting it on the fire when a viper, escaping from the heat, fastened on his hand. When the natives saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "This man must certainly be a murderer. Though he escaped the sea, justice has not let him remain alive." But he shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no harm. They were expecting him to swell up or suddenly to fall down dead. But after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their minds and began to say that he was a god. In the vicinity of the place were lands belonging to a man named Publius, the chief of the island. He welcomed us and received us cordially as his guests for 3 days. It so happened that the father of Publius was sick with a fever and dysentery. Paul visited him, and after praying, laid hands on him and healed him. After this had taken place, the rest of the sick on the island came to Paul and were cured. They paid us great honor, and when we eventually set sail, they brought us the provisions we needed. 3 months later, we set sail on a ship that had wintered at the island. It was an Alexandrian ship with the Dioscuri as its figurehead. We put in at Syracuse and stayed there 3 days, and from there we sailed round the coast and arrived at Rhegium. After a day, a south wind came up, and in 2 days we reached Puteoli. There we found some brothers and were urged to stay with them for 7 days, and thus we came to Rome. The brothers from there heard about us and came as far as the Forum of Appius and 3 taverns to meet us. On seeing them, Paul gave thanks to God and took courage. When he entered Rome, Paul was allowed to live by himself with the soldier who was guarding him. So we see that Paul is a miracle worker. In the Acts of the Apostles, after Pentecost, as well as in the promise of Jesus to his apostles, this idea that the apostles would be able to work miracles, that the apostles and those who believed in God would even be able to be bit by snakes without dying. Now, there are sects of Christianity that are called snake handlers. Their preacher will preach with a venomous snake or with 2 venomous snakes in his arms and saying, look at me, they are not biting me." Now, a lot of times it is party tricks, sometimes it is luck, and often they get bit. They get bit, they sometimes die, they sometimes go to the hospital. This is not what it is talking about. Jesus is not saying, "Go search out trouble because I will protect you from it." Rather, he's saying, if you have faith and if you are following me, then sometimes when you are in trouble, I will save you for the sake of the conversion and growth in faith of others. And so we see Paul, he does this one miracle. He heals the father of Publius. He heals the other sick on the island of Malta. And this brings people toward faith, toward openness to God. Then we see they finally complete their journey. And again, we see the word we, W-E, because Luke, the writer of the Acts of the Apostles, was present during much of this. We see when Paul gets to Rome, he is able to preach, he is able to greet the brethren while he is waiting for his trial date.